who messes stories and history together. We'll be meeting with an Alistair Moore identity and history with our final project. Super fun.
Hi everyone. I don't know many of you, great kids. I've seen some of you all over. So yesterday we celebrated Founders Day. So do you remember who the foundresses of the school are? So I'd like to present to you Miss Denny's niece. Oh my God! So this is Wendy Denny-Smith. Her father was Maynard.
Henry Denny, and he worked here. He worked with his sister.
So many of the family worked here. Iris worked here.
Yes.
Yeah. So Miss Denny's sister Iris worked here as well. So it was very much a family affair at the beginning of the school. So Mrs. Smith, Wendy has come out from Victoria today to speak with you about her experiences here during the Second World War, because she was here. She grew up here. So this is a really unique opportunity to have a conversation with somebody who lived that experience. Not everybody gets to see that side of history. And I know you're studying the Second World War and all the complexities of that. And hopefully this presentation will give you, or let's go into discussion. It's going to be a discussion. This will offer you just a different perspective of somebody who lives the experience. So we're going to just start a conversation. And we have some questions and things that we'll just sort of go through, and you can tell students about your memories of growing up on campus, of being the niece of the founders of the school. And really you felt that Miss Gagan was like your aunt as well.
I thought she was.
Yeah, always thought she was your aunt. So let's have a seat here. Seat. After all these years, I spent 18 years of my life here. And I'm living in Rome. My aunt did. She lived to be 99. Miss Bacon was up in those years too. Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much, and thank you, Karen, for asking me. Nothing's engraved in stone. This is what I remember. Nothing is. Maybe happened something differently, but in my years I remember this, like the dairy children over there. We dug it out because all the men had gone to war. They had joined up, and all the and some of the women that worked at QMS. I mean, we learned how to make bread. Everybody in the kitchen, we had to be taught to do these things because we came from homes where everything was done from, of course. So it was during those war years that I was born in 1930. Okay, you do the math. Yes, I'm that old. So to start with, the things that happened during the war, the area child was built. Miss Denny, Miss Gagan, Nora and daughter me. They were great guiders. They met as being guides. Nora had a school here, Miss Gagan had a school over there, and they got together. They just had a few pupils. I'm sure Kerry had shown you the pictures. And that's how it all started. Then all where the fields, where the buildings are here was just woods. And when the war started, we were going to be like hidden in the woods, and they changed their minds with that. And there were 2 boats, ships, yachts, whatever, down in Maple Bay. And we were going to be, if we got shelled or bombed, which was likely, we were going to be, don't ask me how we were to get there, taken down to Maple Bay to be taken over to the mainland. but I mean, because most of the schoolgirls were boarders, lived here. And during the war, people really did live here. A lot came out from England, a lot of sisters came out. Their fathers were working overseas. The ones I remember were Malaya, China, and but mostly England. And they came here to boarding school, but they lived. They came as kids and they grew up here. And they didn't see their parents for the whole duration of the war. But the Denny's gave them with their home. They lived here. And summer and Easter, everything was the same. We had lovely Christmas dinners and Easter dinners and Thanksgiving. And we lived as a great big happy family. And anybody that makes any friends in QMS, believe it or not, I'm going to be 93 and I still have 2 or 3 friends that went to QMS, and we are still very good friends. If you make friends at QMS, you keep them forever, trust me. And like when they were here on holidays, and of course we were very close to school, I think it still is. We had the stables down there through the building, and the horses were there. I mean, I probably learned to ride, and my father, who was a very good rider in England, I would probably just put on a horse. That's how we learned to ride, just put on a horse. I remember the horses' names. I had King and my sister had Rufus. And now I hear there's some very good, these were just horses. So anyway, and my sight is going too, sorry about that.
So can I just interrupt for a second?
Yes.
Okay. So the students, the children that came here from England, and you mentioned China and Malaysia as well,
Yes.
during the war. So those children, those students were war guests, and it was a scheme to bring young people safe into a place of safety while their parents were living overseas. And Miss Denny-Smith took in many of them, and sometimes the mums came with them, and they lived at the school and they helped out. Isn't that correct?
I don't remember the mums coming.
Okay.
I mean, I had a mum, and she was a wonderful mum to everybody.
Okay.
But they came out and they lived here, and then because it was ongoing all year round, they stayed for Christmas, and they lived here.
And they worked on the farm too.
And they worked on the farms, not having to work. We had the 2 farms, Innisfree and Capachee up Gibbons Road, and we were never, the world was short of food. Everything was rationed, not everything. Meat was rationed, anything to do with sugar, liquor, what else was rationed? Jam, anything to do with sugar.
Butter.
That was made here.
So you only got a certain amount a month.
But everybody came up with their ration coupons. I mean, we had ration coupons that were doled out to everybody, but we never went hungry because we had wonderful farms. We had lots of fruit. We had victory gardens right to the right-hand side of the chapel.
The chapel's right there.
Okay, the right-hand side of the chapel, we had victory gardens. We all had our own little gardens, and then big gardens up at Gibbons Road, up at the school. Innisfree came first, and then Capachee, I think.
Yes. Correct.
And so we had cows, and not a whole bunch. We weren't that big of a school actually in those days. But we had cows and chickens and pigs, and I'm a little bit of a vegetarian because we knew who we were eating actually. That sounds terrible, but they were wonderfully looked after, very wonderfully looked after. Mr. Richardson was an Indian jockey that came and worked at the school with his wife, and they made butter. Butter was awful. It was white because they couldn't get, I don't know why, but they couldn't get, we had butter. This is outside the school. They had little packages of
Well, that was margarine. That was margarine.
Yeah, well, before that, we had like lard, but it was before margarine, and then margarine came in color, but it was white.
And you had to add the little packet. Yeah.
It was rather disgusting.
Rather disgusting.
So the people that worked in the kitchen, the maids as we call them, they worked in the kitchen, they worked in the laundry, there was building for the laundry. So the women went off to be quacks, which was the army, and some went to the Marines for the Navy. And they wore uniforms, so we had to learn to do all these things. We had to iron our own shirts, woe is me. But we had to learn how to do it. And we learned to cook it. And we were very, very well fed. The tables about, well, like this, actually. And we sat, we had impeccable manners, and the food was awesome. Nobody went hungry, but things were hard to get. For instance, elastic bands were treasures.
Really?
Oh, yes, elastic bands, thread, no, string was very hard to get. But there was no such thing on those things. I'm going back to the 30s and 40s, and those things were very hard to get. You couldn't even buy them. I mean, you had the money to help with the fish. But you couldn't buy them. They were just hard to get. But we were totally well fed and well looked after. We said grace and very religiously, not too much. We went to chapel twice a day, our prayers in the morning. You always had your head covered with we call them candies, but they would be berets or you never went into chapel without something on your head, a green beret. And that I'm jumping around, nothing's in order. Green dye, which we all wore, green clothes, green blazer, green tie, obviously was in St. Michael's. Okay, that's what I remember coming here on that.
I am in St. Hughes, so I wore green.
There you go. And the country is after that, we were on St. Michael's. And grasshopper was my thing. We played a grasshopper show when I became an old girl. We played the Bridgman matches, if anybody's ever heard of that. We played grasshopper in Victoria and played against all the schools. And I'm proud to say QMS won a lot.
They won most of the
They won most of the votes, yes. So with the uniforms, there was a big second-hand cover, which we didn't ever have, which we didn't think we would have to do. But you couldn't get green because the green dye was made from khaki, which was made for the army. So there was a big cover, our coats, our blazers, our tunics, our knee socks, everything was green. So we handed down, when my coat got too small, it was put in the cupboard. We had cubicles upstairs. This isn't all exactly about the war, but we did have our own cubicles, our own bedrooms.
Yes. So the old school is where the junior school is now, over there. Right up against the fence. It was a big old building built in 1923. So you lived, the dorms were upstairs?
Upstairs, they were cubicles. They weren't dormitories, they were cubicles.
So like little...
Everybody had their own little room.
So were they partitioned by...
They were cut by a wall,
a wall,
but there was space below and space above, so you shared the light and put on the light. And during the war, no lights could be seen anywhere. We used to get under the bed to talk to each other. Couldn't talk upstairs. So we all got to know the Depute language, just the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, and so on. We could speak to one another. We were allowed to go upstairs. It took forever. Now it's with the news, and they do it very quickly.
So can you tell the grade 10s about some of the rules that you had to follow?
Oh, absolute rules. Well, anyway, yes, we couldn't talk upstairs. We had our own cubicles. We had privacy. And we had washstands in there, which, I mean, that's the way it was.
So there was no running water upstairs?
Oh, yes, but you had a jug, and you filled up the jug, put it in your basin, washed. You were allowed 2 baths a week, no showers in those days, but I can remember. But anyway, we had an alarm, a fire alarm. We had a fire alarm. We used to practice that. And stairs, fire stairs down all over the place.
No, over there.
Yeah. And then we had the air raid alarm. So the air raid alarm would go off in the middle of the night, or any airplane went over. The air raid alarm went, and we always walked in croc. Croc is short for crocodile. We went for 2 by 2. Everywhere we went as girls, we were in croc, 2 by 2. We were very fast moving. We grabbed a coat and a blanket, put our shoes on. Came across the hockey field, which was huge to me in those days. In the pitch black, no lights could be seen from above because of the planes going over. And we came to sat in the air raid shelter, and we were given hardtack to eat. Hardtack was like a hard, crusty something. I don't know why it was
Kind of like a biscuit?
Oh, very hard
But
biscuit.
hard and kind of tasteless?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yummy.
So we came over here, we stayed in the air raid shelter. Until the old pier went, which went throughout Duncan. And then the area shelter came where we sat and watched the tennis. The tennis court was right below, and that's where we watched tennis from. I mean, some of us did, yes.
So what was your experience being inside the air raid shelter as a child, pitch dark, scared, eating hardtack? What did-
Not very nice. It was very scary.
Right.
But we were, I mean, there was bathrooms in there and everything, and then it was all right. We were very well cared for. I never did like the dark. To this day, I don't like the dark. Coming across the hockey field with the shoes when you're little. So I was, what, 9. And anyway, but yes, we had to dig out near each other. I'd say we, not me, I was a child, but people came, anybody that could come and help on the Gibbons Road right there. Anyway, to keep lights out, my father had built great big huge frames that would blackout blinds and put in them. So the school rooms were downstairs. I'm just doing this from memory, okay, so bear with me. They were covered. No light could get out. With dusk, these huge blinds were put on all the downstairs chapels. You went to chapel and you went in the dark. We did have little tiny flashlights, which could never be seen. And the upstairs, each individual cubicle had its own blind, a blackout blind, so no light could be seen anywhere. And then they decided that the swimming pool was made, no color, and that could be seen, so we had to paint it. We painted it like a garden, with so it looked like part of the garden. But the swimming, I mean, you don't really necessarily disinfectants now, but there were 2 buckets. I remember this on the side of the swimming pool. We put our feet in there to wash our feet before we went in the pool. 24th of May, the plug was put in the pool. The hoses were turned on, so you can imagine how long it took to fill. And then we swam. We used to sneak down the fire escapes and do midnight swims. The students didn't do this. There were bedroom windows faced here. They knew exactly what was going on. And the school was built in bits and pieces, so there were creepy floors and things. And I must say, the attic above them was the sick room. So there was no disinfectant or anything like that. I mean, I even came up with my mask on, but I see nobody's wearing a mask. We had to learn to put a gas mask on. Your whole face is encased, covered in this gas mask, rubber, with a long hose guide where the hose went. But we had to learn to wear a gas mask, which was rubberized and you're encased in it. A mask is nothing now compared to what we had to wear, but we never had to, because we were never.
But you were trained how to put it on and how to use it.
Yes. Now, cars, because of the lighting, I'm talking about the blackouts in the war years. Cars, 2/3, 3/4 of the car lights, headlights were covered. So just about hardly anything showed. I could visualize the driving in those days was very slow and very small cars. And they had ARPs. Yes, they were around. And they could see any lights, the whistle was blown and you covered up that light. So everything was very covered up. That was the main thing, to keep everything in blackness. What else is there? Down here. Yes, the lighting was very dangerous to be seen by the planes that went overhead. I'm jumping around from thing to thing.
So tell the grade 10s about salvage.
Oh, the salvage was the main thing. The covered way, which was between the gym, that was the gym, and the 2 lower
The gym
schools.
was now the Fine Arts Hall.
Yeah.
That was the original gym.
We practiced tennis against the gym. But the covered way was between the school and the gym, and that's what we should salvage. And as we were in our guide uniform, it was very planned, and lots of colleges and that's what we're done is now. But we went from house to house collecting salvage in our guide uniforms, went to the house, and the main things were newspaper, rags, metal, silver paper, and cardboard. The cardboard was saved, flattened, and we, the children, you kids, because you couldn't drive then until you were 21, were taken on the sidewalks, and then Queenie, the school truck, Muskegon drove, and the older ones picked up the salvage that we took from the house to the sidewalk into the truck. And then it was brought up to QMS here to the covered way, and all the things, newspapers were rolled up and made into Yule logs. If you know what a Yule log is, you burn it on the fireplace. And then it was it was saved. Remember, I mean, to buy a parachute in those days was $500, and QMS was very proud that they could make this money, and the paper and everything was sent down to Sydney Roofing Paper, roofing company, went to Cowichan Bay on the barge to Victoria, and we did make quite a lot of money. So our 3 Saturdays for all that time was spent on doing the salvage, and we did do very well with it. I mean, we saved envelopes. They wrote letters in those days with envelopes. There were no notepads or pieces of paper to write on, so you turned an envelope inside out, and there was your notepad. And that's how you wrote notes and things like that. Elastic string, I mean, I bet if you have great-grandmothers, they would still have a ball of string and a ball of elastic bands in their top drawer. Those were the things that were very hard to get. I mean, and clothing was very hard to get, so everybody made do.
Can I interrupt?
Yes?
I just wanted to explain a bit more about the salvage program. So this is a program that started in England at the beginning of the war and was practiced throughout the Commonwealth. It may have been practiced other places, I'm not sure. And it started with metal. And so everybody donated anything that they had with metal. So pots and pans, gates, fences, and this was metal melted down by the government to make ammunition and other things, machines of war. And after sort of the metal petered out, people could only give so much, then they started in with the paper and all the other things that Wendy has mentioned.
Yeah.
And the selling, I guess the recycling of these materials, I mean, really it was an early recycling program.
It was, yeah.
So the recycling of these materials went to various businesses like Sydney Paper, and then they would sell them on and make money that would go back, and it was a big government scheme, and the money would go, then you could choose what you wanted the money that you raised to go to. So
we had a boat. We
Margaret bought a boat
with 3 markers on it,
and the parachutes, and we have a list of all those things in the archive. So when you get to that, if that's something you're interested in, we get to that. We have all the accounts of all the stuff that you picked up and you sold. Yeah, yeah. So it was, and you see it in movies and TV shows about England during the war, but it happened here as well, all over Canada and in Dublin as well.
We would send parcels back to England, and we all had family back in England, and we sent parcels to them, and they were sewn up, like with material. So hopefully they wouldn't be broken into, because they were really suffering in England. I mean, they were lucky they had 1 egg a week. There was another school called Cambridge Farm Schools, which is south of Duncan, and it was Cambridge Farm Schools, and there were a lot of children, I mean, it was full of children brought out from England, not by their parents. The parents of the people who went to QMS, they willingly sent their children to pre-market school to keep them safe. But there were some in London where the bombing was at its worst. And these children were literally sent out to Fairbridge Farm School, and there they worked on the farms and had schooling, and some of them never did get home. It was a sad life for the kids. I mean, they were very well looked after. They was very well looked after. There was never a problem among any of these kids. But there was another place they were sent to from England, and we never had to leave Vancouver Island. You know, we were very lucky. Teachers were called mistresses from England, if you can imagine. But anyway, that's what they were called, and they were hard. Nobody traveled in those days because we didn't travel. I mean, there were torpedoes everywhere, and so the people that came out stayed out. I'm just thinking. I don't see well, so I'm struggling with that.
So did the horses stay here during the war?
The horses, there weren't many. No, there weren't many. We had our own stables, and my dad was very involved in that because he was the top rider in hunting the hounds in England, if you know that expression. The animals stayed, yes, they did.
Some people had to give up their horses.
I don't think they had horses during the war. I don't remember too many horses during the war.
Okay, but they may have worked on the farm, the horses, so maybe that's why.
Well, there probably were workhorses as well, up at the farm, but we were very, I say, very well fed, very well looked after, very cared for. My house was next door. My father built the house, and I've just been told it was taken down and moved somewhere else. So I was going to live here for 18 years because I was a kid, and that was my auntie, and I would run over here. And my sister was head girl, she went to St. Hughes, and she was head girl, and she was one of the 2 years older than I am. So she was one of the workers at Salvage, and she made a very good friend. His parents lived in Malaya. I mean, they came from everywhere, and I know you are now. And it's wonderful to see so many different people living here with the QMS on them. Trying to think about graphic curtains, salvage. Salvage was one of the main things. The clothing, we received clothing, and the buttons were taken off the shirts, the collars, and the buttons were sewed to a piece of cardboard, and that was something to be sold. So we were making money all the time. We did, and there was no television or anything like that, so in the evenings we sat down in the entrance hall. Miss Denny-Smith read to us, and we were very supposed to be knowledgeable, and she read to us during that, and we knitted like crazy because we were knitting khaki wool. We used to make wristlets for it down to here, so the men could use them, still have access to their fingers. So we did a lot of knitting, and there was a lot of selling of these things. Well, we didn't sell them, we gave them to the army, and there were two, and I'm going to hitchhiking now. My father was in the army. He lied about his age to get in the second war. He lied about his age to get in the first war, but he went overseas, and his brother was killed in France in the first war, and his name is on the cenotaph down in Duncan. And if anybody was hitchhiking on the Malahat, there were two army bases in Victoria. One was in Jordan Head, one was in the Sioux area, and you would see a man in uniform hitchhiking, and they were automatically picked up because they were obviously coming home to Duncan. Dad would come home, and he spent a couple of days with us, and you automatically picked us. There weren't that many cars in those days. And I remember a man picked up my dad, I don't remember this, but picked up a dad on the Malahat, and the man said, they got talking, and the man said to my dad, I'm just devastated, my wife has just died, and I have a daughter, and I have to work, and I don't know what to do with my daughter, and they happened to be there and taken. And Dad said, well, where you're taking me is Queen Margaret School, and my sister runs, and you could think about sending me to Queen Margaret School, and it's better in Vancouver. And subsequently, she came to QMS and went through QMS. And her father, he was something to do with the Army. He was very grateful to picking up my dad and saying where to go and what to do. Because that's how so many people came to QMS. I said there was mostly boarders, and mostly from other, a lot from Kelowna. And you were very lucky if you were friends with the Kelowna girl, because they sent down boxes of fruit. Kelowna was known for sort of fruit. And Portai was a room. Portai is Latin for many doors, or something like that. Anybody take Latin? Not anymore. Not anymore? No, Baby was a Latin teacher, and she was awesome, and it does help. I worked for a doctor, and I knew more Latin than he did. Doctors are supposed to know Latin. But anyway, and so there was, it was called Tucker, and that was your, now it would be coffee break at 11 o'clock. We were taken in there. And if you had a friend that was a good friend that had apples from Kelowna, they were awesome. And it was very, very sad. We had a Japanese man that delivered fish, and he was lovely with a bureau truck. And suddenly he disappeared, and the Japanese were taken up to the interior, and I knew a very family, Mirror County family on Salt Spring. They were a wonderful family. And they were, that's what happened during the war. It was very sad. They lost their property, but they got it back. And they were just lovely people, like everybody else. And we had, there were two phones, and I even remember the phone numbers. Miss Denny had a phone, 455 was her phone number. Miss Denny speaking. She was not musical. Miss Gaten was very musical. Miss Denny was totally not musical at all, and she admitted it. But chapel was a wonderful place for us. Religion was not drilled into us, but it was just there. We went to chapel twice a day in the morning and sang, and just a short, very short hymn and prayer, and everybody was in front, 2 by 2 going out. Evening service, Miss Denny stood outside under the bell and shook hands with every single girl. Good night, Mary. Good night, Wendy. I was allowed to kiss her good night because she was my aunt, and my sister the same. And chapel was a very major, important thing in our lives. But it wasn't drilled into us. It was non-denominational, so anybody could go whatever religion they were. But they were mostly Anglican, if I remember rightly. And guides were very, very important. The Girl Guide camp, that's how Miss Denny and Miss Gaten got together.
Should we show them your photo up here?
Oh.
This is Wendy in her Girl Guide uniform.
Wow.
Many years ago. And guides were very important. There was a guide hole down on Thames Street.
Still there.
The hospital, the King's College Hospital, it was all redone, all something else. Miss Denny actually died there at 99 years old. She was very deaf, very blind, very lame, but her mind was serious about it. You had to get right on top, top of her to say something, but she lived a very good life. And she did a lot for Duncan. And then her mother came over in the days when 8-year-olds would not fly out from England, which she did. Brought out our lady called Miss Hayes, and brought out and lived. And when Granddaddy was a doctor in England, and his grandfather before him was a doctor. And when he passed, Granny came out from England and lived at the school. So there were quite a few generations. What did I miss here?
I think there's some time for some questions, maybe?
Well, I don't know that answer them, but you could anybody about the war years, which were major for quite a while. But we were very well cared for, nothing did happen. But I told you, Maple Bay was where we were going to be taken and put on boats and take to the mainland. So has anybody got any grandparents that they remember any of this?
Any questions?
How aware were students of the events of the Holocaust?
I think one,
How aware were the students of the events of the Holocaust?
Did you know anything about the Holocaust when you were at school?
we knew, but we were only told what we should know.
Right? They would have been shielded
We
from.
were very shielded. We were very shielded from that.
I think the whole world was pretty shielded, actually, in a sense. I mean, it wasn't really truly unearthed and discovered until sort of towards the very end of the war. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes?
Were you like actively worried about bombings or attacks during the war?
No, we were too well settled to be scared about it. We knew what would happen. There were airplanes going over, we were going to be shelled, and there were some shells somewhere in Vancouver Island, but I don't know whether that actually happened or not. But personally, no, we weren't scared because we were so well shielded and cared for. We had lots of food, but the blackout lines, I mean, just like wearing a mask now. I've got great-grandchildren. They always have to wear, I think they're still wearing masks to school, but nothing is compared to the gas mask we had to learn to put on. But we were well sheltered. But I think the scariest thing I did was walk across the field, the hockey field, in the middle of the night with the air raid, sitting in the air raid shelter. We were just little girls, and it was all girls. There weren't any men around. You know, my dad was stationed in the veterans car down in Victoria, but not for long because he was caught up in the days. He was actually too old. Yes?
If you ever ran out of rationings, would you have eaten the horses?
Just think of it.
If you run out of
Never. We never ran out of rations. We were never hungry. There was plenty of food for us, not for everybody, but pre-Margaret, Miss Denny was be prepared was her motto, and there was always lots of food for us. We had excellent meals, and then we learned to cook them ourselves, so we did learn quite a bit.
So what were the meals that you would eat?
So can you remember any of the meals? Do you remember what you...
Oh, absolutely. Meat, potatoes, and and vegetables. Every single dinner was lunchtime, 12 o'clock. We filed in, we had individual tables with the teacher at the end of the, we had impeccable manners. I mean, I still eat a sandwich with the night before. I'm joking, but that's the way we were brought up. The meals were we always had a dessert, pie and whipped cream on Sundays, lots of milk, nothing was homogenized, nothing was frozen. We had a root cellar out underneath the kitchen where all the vegetables, beets and potatoes and carrots and all the vegetables that we grew on the farm were kept in a root cellar, so they were cold. But I don't remember freezers. Do you have freezers? Above the fridge?
I don't remember seeing photos of freezers.
No, we used to, I must admit, we were naughty, we sneaked out, we always had, kids were always hungry. We would sneak out of the kitchen and steal a bit of, there were buns lying around. I remember stealing some raisins out of the jar and took them up and got under my bed to see my blood when they were wiggling. So I remember eating a raisin since. They'd been there too long. And we'd steal the odd banana, but not many of us, but we did do work for
You were hungry. You needed food.
We weren't really hungry, we were just greedy, I think. And there were second helpings for everybody. We brought up to get second helpings. If we ate fast enough, we would get third helping. And Miss Denny, they knew all this. They knew, and there was absolutely no liquor on the premises, but when Granny Denny came out from, she was a small person, came out from England, she always, her husband was a doctor, Granddaddy, she always had a bottle of stout. Well, for us to see stout, liquor on the table, but that's the way they did, that's what they did. And she always had a bottle of stout, which was very, very good to give to people that were underway.
Stout is beer. That's
Oh.
a beer. Yeah.
It's a beer.
Yeah. You had a question?
On the subject of food, did the students who were coming from other countries ever bring little pieces of like food or snacks from their country? Did you ever try that?
Was the food always British, or was there influence from other countries?
No,
in the
no,
cuisine?
because the girls that came out were British. They just happened to live in China because their father was, that's where he worked in the diplomatic service or something. They were English girls.
So all your cuisine was British?
It was all British. And that, yes, absolutely British. I don't remember any
Other type of cuisine?
type of food.
One other question about food. Did you guys grow your own food during the time?
Sorry?
Were you fully self-sustainable?
Yeah, so they asked if you grow your own food. Yeah, so Wendy mentioned the two farms, Innisfree and Capuchin,
Yeah.
which were up on Gibbons Road there.
So we grew our own food. Corn and potatoes. We were doing the
Carrots, all
potatoes.
those vegetables.
All the way, and we had victory gardens to the right-hand side of the chapel. We all had our own, not all of us, but some of us had our own gardens. We grew carrots and radishes. You know, it was strictly English food. I don't remember, I never knew what, my son happens to live in the Philippines, and he comes up to see me twice a year. And, he loves their food, the Philippine food, which I didn't even know what it was. But no, there wasn't any extra food. Meat, potatoes, and vegetables is what we had every single day. Supper, we had breakfast, we had a good breakfast, bacon and eggs and scrambled eggs, and I don't remember any coffee. It was all tea. But I think Miss Jagan drank coffee. And they had the head table, like that would be here, like us, and we were there at the tables. But the food was excellent all through the war. We never went without. The kids brought out in ships from dodging the torpedoes. They were well fed too, because they had huge bars with good food in them. Yeah. But I'm sorry, I can't see you that clearly to say, where are you from?
I'm from China originally.
China, yes. And I actually have a Japanese dentist. And he tells me about things and he still has a German accent, he was born there. Now there's everybody imaginable nationalities. And I have a bit of care in the mornings, Bihar, Vancouver Island, I have a little bit of help, because I still live in my own place. and I don't walk very well, etc. But I mean, there are very few Canadian people there. They're mostly Philippine, Chinese. My favorite is the Chinese girl, actually. She's wonderful. And with a mask, and they all have to wear masks. But they're very kind. And the same with the Philippines. They don't have seniors homes. In Victoria, there are so many seniors homes, and I'm lucky, Rosemary, somebody mentioned Rosemary.
So she was
She was going to come here, and she's at home, and her nephew lives down, and the wife lived downstairs to help her, because there was no such things as the other countries. They don't put their seniors in homes.
Let's see if there's any more questions. Are there any more questions?
I have one. About the air raid shelter, you mentioned that people from the community came to help build it. Was it used as a community air raid shelter, or was it just for the school?
It was just for the school,
Okay.
actually. Yes, it was.
Oh, I know, so going back to food, at the archives, we have Miss Denny's cookbook. So if anyone wants to see exactly what was being
She
cooked,
was a very good cook.
yeah, you can look at Miss Denny's actually handwritten cookbook.
The stove in the kitchen was a huge wooden coal stove. It was humongous, and the pancakes were put all over the stove that we ate, and it was run by a soda firm. So there was like this shape, and there was a thing of everybody going by. They would fill up the soda firm, and that's how the stove was kept going.
So
Oh, yes.
was it an agate?
I guess it was something but it was kept going by soda, That's how it was kept going.
Do you know of any buildings that were built before or during the war that are still standing just in the community?
So that any buildings built during the war that are still standing in Duncan?
Just in the general
In the
area?
general
Well,
area.
the gym.
The gym was built.
The gym was built
in 20. That was built before the war. During
Oh, we
the
meant
war.
during the war.
Yeah,
In
during war.
Duncan for war purposes.
Yeah.
I have to think about that.
Or-
The armories have gone, yeah.
The agricultural, big building,
It's gone.
that's gone. That's what we used to have gymkhanas that we rode in. I just noticed coming through Duncan, that building's gone totally. Yeah.
It even had like some Quonset huts in Duncan up until the 1980s, and they're all gone. I think one was used as a curling range, and yeah, there's, yeah, it's a good question though.
The kitchen was you come in the driveway to the school, it was the first thing you saw. The building was kind of added on to. I mean, it was just the main building. It was always nice and warm. And the dishes were done there. No dishwashers in those days. None of these things that we all have now. It was right in the main part of the school. With the dining room, and there was like a hatchway. And the food was put on the hatchway, and two girls at the table. You'd go and they put the food on a plate, and you bring it to us. And then two of you bring the food to us, and then you took away the plates and put it on the hatchway that went up and down.
Oh, so it was like
It was,
what
yes,
do they call dumbwaiter?
yes.
Okay.
So from the kitchen, there was two windows, and you put the food was put on one window into us
So
girls.
kind of like it is today at the dining room.
And then the other window, you put the dirty dishes on.
Exactly the same as it is
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Oh, some more in the back.
Sid,
What did you do in grade 10? Like, what was happening?
What was happening when you were in grade 10?
Yes.
When I worried very much about coming out talking to you people, I visualized myself in the classroom that was the grade 10 one. And I just had that envision. We had desks, and our books stayed in the desks all the time. We did not carry them around. What did I do? About 10 to 3, I was busy putting my hockey pants on. We were sort of eager, probably French class or something. We had lessons, but the mistresses, teachers came to us to teach us. We didn't go anywhere. We stayed in the same classroom the whole time, all day. And then out to the hockey field. If it rained, we had to walk and cross up the highway for 1 mile and back. We hated the rain, but
The grade.
yeah, very well.
What would be some punishments you had to face if rules were broken?
So punishment, so if you got caught swimming in the swimming pool at midnight, did you ever face punishment?
Now, picking up stones off the hockey field with a bucket, that was one of the main ones. That seemed to be my job when I did something naughty. You could not talk upstairs. You couldn't run upstairs. You couldn't slide down the banister. There was the main stairway. If you were caught sliding down the banister or running down the stairs, 2 by 2, there was a book just upstairs. You were in that book and you were given a punishment. Or you couldn't talk or something. Nothing was bad. No bad punishments. You had something taken away from you.
Did you have like demerit points or something?
We had demerit points, yes. And then you could work those off. But the main one that I remember was picking up stones off the hockey field.
We have lots of photos of kids picking up stones on the hockey field. It's nice and smooth today. Look at all that work he did.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Yeah. But you couldn't talk, as I said, we all used the deaf-mute language, but alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, N, O, P, Q. Anyway, I'm doing that under the bed with a flashlight with your friend looking at you. So we could get under the bed, there was no this much distance, you could slide under the beds. And we did, bad and naughty, totally different.
Did you know this traditional old
But
Older.
and the parents are in the war? Were there any male teachers there?
Did you have any male teachers?
there were no men anywhere, the girls' school.
The only men were men that were too young, too old, or had an injury. So they would have been working like other places.
Like Jill Gibbons Road is up there.
Yeah, it's right there.
Well, Gibbons Road, there was a boys' school called the grammar school. It wasn't very big. It was a grammar school, they wore uniforms. And we did a little, we were about to talk and what we kind of did. And that was very well run too, but it wasn't that big a school.
They had male teachers.
They had all male teachers.
Okay.
As far as work skills for team athletes, back when you were in school, were there any competitive games at all with other schools?
Yeah, competitive games with other schools for field hockey.
Oh, you field hockey, we played against all the schools in Victoria. That was the only game that we played, just for those tennis. No, there was a tennis club in the state, which was Staples Ground. We did individually play, but there were no really
And horse equestrian competition.
No, the competition was down in the agriculture grounds, which was down in Duncan. But no, not in my, not that I remember.
You did sports days though.
Oh, we had sports days.
They did track and
for years.
field and those kinds.
I mean, hurdles, long jumping, high jumping, sports were the main thing, especially during the war. Yeah.
Dion.
Very curious factor. Spin, and then Dion.
Were you able to learn like any languages from other students? Like, did they help?
Did you learn different languages?
No, because the students were English. They came from China, Malaya, or anywhere. No, there were no students that weren't English. Everybody spoke English. We took French and we took Latin. Mr. Schilling taught everybody French and Latin, but there were no other languages. Absolutely no other languages that I remember.
I see, thank you.
Whoever's next to that very interested line of students back there.
What was your curfew at night? What time did you have to sleep?
What time did you go to bed?
Oh, when we lived here, so bedtime was 7 o'clock, or I don't know how old you were, 8 o'clock. You went to bed, you slept in the cubicles, and it was very definite. You went to bed, and that was the end of that.
So the younger you were,
The
obviously.
younger you were, it went by classes, sports, grades, I guess. I mean, the grade 12 went to bed later. You got up at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and you were ready to go to chapel first, fully dressed.
Chapel before breakfast.
I think chapel was before breakfast. Honestly, you stuck me there.
Do you remember any of your old teachers?
And your old teachers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I can name them off, there's pictures here that I brought up to Carrie. Oh yes, you got to know your teachers, it was very definitely Mrs. or Miss, mostly Miss when I think about it. Yeah, but there was your question, there were actually no men anywhere. My dad worked here, he built the trains for the blackout lines, and he drove the car, and he the horses.
Because he was a bit older then?
He was older.
Yeah.
He lied about his age to get in the first floor, he lied about his age to get in the second floor.
But he didn't go overseas.
He didn't go overseas in the second floor, he was in India for the first floor.
Any more questions? Well, they were all excellent questions.
But I guess when I said they came from China and Malaya, those were friends of my sister and I, but they were in the I just want to read one last thing, being a very horsey story. This is a true story, and I knew the granddaughter down there. Just a footnote to the story of the worst street disaster in North America. North America, where on May the 26th, 1896, an overloaded streetcar crashed through the Point Ellis Bridge, which is now the Blue Bridge in Victoria, that separates Victoria from the Squamish, on the Victoria Day celebrations in Squamish. This is written by this girl, Heather Graham. My great-great-grandfather was among those who horse and buggy days wanting to cross the bridge to get to them at the same time. The horse refused to cross, so the tram went past it and crashed right before their eyes. My great-great-grandfather tried everything, but the horse would not budge. It knew something was wrong. The bridge collapsed right before their eyes. Of the 88 survivors, many were taken to the lawns of what is now Point Ellis Museum, which is now closed due to lack of funds. Interesting to owe one's existence to a horse. As all horse riders, I mean, a horse won't do anything he doesn't really want to do. And the horse saved this couple from drowning down in the waters between Wall Street and Victoria to the Squamish. It's now the Blue Bridge. And they have the Dorset Bridge still that opens up for the to get underneath it. Yeah.
And that's a whole really interesting part of Victorian history.
So all the people,
And you know that family that.
and I know this family, it comes in the paper every single year. But I mean, this is, yeah. Oh, I must admit, we used to eat, I remember eating bran, and we had food that was a dog around. My father always had a Dalmatian. This David always had a cat called Edward. One cat called Edward. It was always new. I don't remember that.
You don't remember the
No. But
We have a whole book about Edward the cat. In the archives.
to hear what I have to say, and that's from memory. Nothing's engraved in stone, nothing's in order. The area shovel was the main thing, the swimming pool, the salvage days. The salvage was a big thing that we did to make a lot of money in the war years. And the black house, that was a major thing as kids. That was the worst thing that we went, wasn't bad at all, but I mean, it was a very major thing in those days. But we were well bred, well looked after, and it was the best years of my life. I had some years that I wanted to be. But thank you for being awesome with you.
Thank you.